Hey guys, and welcome back to the first proper episode of Let's Talk Liverpool this season for the Premier League game for Liverpool against Leeds at Anfield. And my God, like flipping hell, it was a roller coaster of a match. Like if the rest of the season's like this, I think this is our punishment for such a good season last season. But oh my God, it was a game filled with ups and downs, filled with moments of brilliance and moments of horrendous defending from both teams. And just a game that I guess really summed up the Premier League and sold the Premier League on the first kind of weekend, which is from a commercial perspective what the Premier League would hope for, but showed, for me at least, really good and positive things from a Liverpool perspective. Obviously lots of things to work on too, but also then from a Leeds perspective about kind of how I think maybe they'll do this season, given how they played against Liverpool, given the things that they look really good at and the things that maybe they need to improve as well. So as always, guys, we'll do a run through of kind of analysis on the goals, and I've got a couple of points that I want to make around kind of analysis of the game, what I thought we did well, what I thought we probably could have done differently or better. And well, before I jump into that, I just want to touch on Leeds quickly. We'll touch on the goals and we'll talk about their fantastic play. But by God, they're a credit to the Premier League. Like, it's their first game up. You know, we know Leeds' history with the Premier League and kind of the romanticism with having them back in the Premier League. And they didn't kind of rest on that. They showed exactly what they showed in the Championship last season, that they're a really hard-working team that are not afraid to press, not afraid to get in the faces of the opposition, whoever that may be, whether it be Liverpool, the champions, or just a team lower down the division. And they showed that for 90 minutes. You know, after watching the first 15, 20 minutes, I was like, nah, there's no way Leeds are going to keep this up for the entire 90 minutes. But they proved me wrong. Whether or not they can sustain that over the course of a whole season is yet to be seen. But if I take anything from this game, I think Leeds are going to have hopefully, I think a very successful season for them. In my Premier League predictions video, I thought that they might finish towards the bottom, but having watched that, I feel like I should also already change that prediction, because just the way they played, the confidence they played with, the number of plays they got forward, very, very impressive. So I'll be definitely looking forward to watching Leeds play. But let's start with the goals, right? Because there's so many. I was not expecting to go through this many goals on one game, or our first game of the season. But scoring started very, very early, within 5 minutes actually, with a penalty. It was definitely a handball. I think when you see it, although it did deflect slightly up off the defender's knee, his hand was so far away from his body that it was, directly obstructing the ball from getting through. So I think it definitely was a penalty. And Salah scored it, no problem, smashing it down the middle. And I really thought when that happened that, that put us in a fantastic, great position. And could we kind of go on from here? We've seen it before where we score an early goal, we get on top, we cause some more chances, we score 2 or 3 goals, the opposition get demoralised, and that's pretty much game over just from the first 5-10 minutes. But it didn't turn out that way at all, and I think that's probably, as much as it is down to our errors and Liverpool's errors, I think it's down to the fantastic play and fight and determination of Leeds, and they showed that in terms of the equaliser. Was a fantastic ball upfield by Calvin Phillips, and it was a great bit of play from Harrison, first to cut inside of Trent Alexander-Arnold, and then to cut inside Gomez with a fantastic strike at the near post past Alisson. The one thing I would say about Liverpool and what we could have done better there, so I think Trent got caught out too easily. I think Harrison got past him too easily. And then also just the kind of defence in terms of how Gomez and Trent, the closeness between the two, how they cut out Harrison wasn't the best. And we did look a bit disorganised at that point in terms of being able to cut out things that last season we were just able to cut out, things that weren't an issue last season. But fair play to Leeds from Harrison. It was a very, very good goal, very good take, and very good finish. But it didn't stay that way for too long, and I don't think any of the scores really stayed the same apart from in the second half. And we did make it 2-1 shortly afterwards. It was a great cross from Andy Robertson from the corner, and Virgil van Dijk rising, almost a free header. I think it was a free header. He managed to lose his defender with kind of Sadio Mane running across the defender, and Virgil van Dijk was able to just head the ball It was at the goalkeeper, but the amount of force on the header kind of just forced the goalkeeper back past the line. But it was very weird. The referee didn't give the goal straight away. The commentators here, at least in the UK, didn't really pick up on it. And obviously there's no crowd noise, so it went a bit quiet. You thought, is there a foul somewhere? They're all in corners. There always is there's a possibility of a foul as players run into each other. But it was given as a goal, and we were 2-1 ahead. But no sooner have we gone 2-1 ahead, and we praise Virgil van Dijk for his fabulous header, we actually go back the other end and Leeds score to make it 2-2 with Patrick Bamford. And for me, this was... we've seen Virgil van Dijk since he's come in, right? We talked about when he first came in about how he's a Rolls Royce of a defender. And we've seen that so much, we've got so used to it. One thing I would say, though, in this game at least, particularly with this second goal, I saw a bit of complacency. Now, this was something that was always going to be a potential problem coming into a season after, working so hard and becoming champions, that we would get complacent with how we play, what worked, and kind of just being champions. And I really saw this in that Virgil van Dijk clearance, or the attempted clearance, which didn't work, obviously, as he would have liked, and was finished off by Patrick Bamford. But that complacency, I'm sure Klopp will be drilling into the players. It's not something we can see this season. We just can't have complacency if we're gonna have any chance of retaining the Premier League. We just honestly just can't be that complacent. I'll quickly run through the final goals because I want to touch on the analysis more, but 3-2 is one goal for me that I really, really want to call out. It was a fantastic finish from Salah right in the top bins, and I'm sure at this point with 2 goals in the first 35 minutes, he would have had Fantasy Premier League players rejoicing all around the country and all around the world. And it went into halftime 3-2. And you kind of knew it wasn't going to end 3-2, right? With both defenses being so disorganized, but both attacks being so clinical. You always knew this wasn't going to end 3-2, and it didn't. Leeds kind of worked their way back into the second half. Liverpool were pressing, but not really creating too many chances. And it was actually Leeds who got the equaliser. Liverpool had threatened, but hadn't scored that 4th goal to give themselves a 2-goal advantage, and Leeds capitalised on that. And really, really good goal, really great finish by Click. And again, bodies in the box was the reason why they scored that goal. And fair play to them, because they still continued to commit even though they were behind. But then ultimately, as I think was always the case, that Liverpool were able to just pull it out when it mattered, and able to get a penalty right in the dying embers of the game, with Fabinho being able to knock the ball past the defender, and the defender taking him out. And it was, again, stonewall penalty, no conversations, no if, buts or maybes. And it was Salah who had a chance for his hat-trick, who had been the best player on the park by Mar, but I'll talk about that a little later. And he smashed it down to the right, I think it was, and he put it away nicely for his hat-trick and to give us the 4-3 lead. And that was pretty much it, and we took away the 3 points, and I think... there were lots of goals, and there were lots of positive things, as I said, and lots of negative things. And one of the negative things I think that I want to start off with was why Klopp left Fabinho on the bench. I thought this was quite a puzzling decision. Maybe there's something behind it in terms of injury or something that we don't know about. But Henderson didn't play the end of last season, has only been really training and hasn't played for a long, long time. And kind of ever since Fabinho came to the team, once he had that initial bedding in period, unless he was injured, he's always played because he provides such a solid kind of defense in front of the back 2, and almost becomes a back 3 when he drops in there, as well as his play moving forward, dinking balls in behind, like we've seen for him for Sadio Mane many times last season. And just something questionable as to why Klopp decided to go with that midfield. I think given Henderson having not played and things like that, the midfield I would have gone for would have been Fabinho, Keita and Wijnaldum, and then maybe bring on Henderson for Keita or someone like that. But I think, maybe Klopp wanted to get his captain back in the team, which I understand, but it just seemed like a strange decision. And when Fabinho did come on, we looked a lot better, and we were able to sustain the attacks, which is what Fabinho really does really, really well. The other, I guess, negative thing I want to talk on, and it's not really a negative thing, but it's something that I think it will just address itself as we play more games, and that is the form of Trent Alexander-Arnold. So I think he looked really off it in this game. Maybe it was his fitness. Maybe it was just he wasn't up to speed because I think he missed out. He didn't really play in any of the pre-season games we had. Played a little bit for England, but just hasn't had those minutes that some of the others had. Obviously, he didn't play in the Community Shield final either, and he really did look off it. He didn't look like his usual best, fizzing in fantastic balls, getting forward down the right-hand side, and that showed with Klopp taking him off with just a couple minutes to go. Even though that was a bit of a defensive change, just to give us a bit of protection at the back, I think Trent definitely needs a couple of games just to get back into the swing of things. It's not necessarily a criticism of himself. All the players kind of go through this process, and I'm sure we'll see many Premier League players and Premier League teams suffering from the same thing. But yeah, it's just something I want to call out that I think maybe Nico Williams can capitalise on early in the season, whereas if he can get himself into the team and kind of play well whilst Trent's getting back into form, I think that'll be really, really good for Liverpool and for Nico Williams too. And then the final thing I want to touch on from a negative perspective before I get to praising Mo Salah, which we must do, because maybe I don't think he's maybe appreciated by everyone as much as he should be. But the final point I want to talk on is around the defence. So we talked a bit about the defence in terms of their first goal, in terms of looking a bit disorganised, and Gomez and Van Dijk just didn't have their best games. I talked about Van Dijk maybe being a little bit complacent. Gomez looked a little bit off it. I don't know whether he maybe had a bit of fatigue after playing for England twice. I don't know what it was, or maybe they're not used to the partnership and getting used to that. But the defence was a bit disorganised. And by disorganised, I mean the lines that they were holding. We do hold a high line. We have held a high line for the last couple of seasons. So it's not something we're implementing for the first time. But they weren't in line, and we nearly got caught out a couple of times by that. They both made individual errors as well, which is very, very rare. But again, I think this is something that will just be a bit of a bedding in period, particularly at the beginning of the season. And I think, as is the case for all teams, at the beginning of the season, the most important thing is just the 3 points. You need to get those 3 points on the board to get that momentum going, and by doing that, you give yourself the ability to grow into the season and get to your best form. No one's going to be playing their best football straight away, right? We all know that. And so it's important to, one, just get the 3 points, and then two, use these experiences as things to learn on and work on in training. And then finally, I guess I want to touch on the main positive in this game for me, and that was Mo Salah. And he was on it like a car bonnet. Like, he was absolutely on it. Fantastic play, fantastic, setup play, fantastic finishes. Mo Salah's finishing has been something that people have questioned for a while, and it's always one of these very strange things, because we saw in the first season he came, yes, he wasn't the most clinical on his left foot, but he scores that many goals for a reason, right? And the reason is he's a great finisher, and we saw that with his second goal, where he absolutely just lashed the ball into the top corner. Now, most players would have just leant back and absolutely blazed that over the bar into the stands, but he was able to keep his knee over the ball and get it going towards the to the goal, and it was a fabulous finish. And we saw with the penalties as well, fantastic finishes. The first one straight down the middle, the second one over to the right, and keeper was nowhere near it, and he was by far the best player on the pitch. He looked the most dynamic, the most fit, and I think everything on that kind of stance was great. The other thing I want to end on in today's episode is, obviously, as we have a shout out to Klopp, and I mentioned it a bit before, but for me it's about keeping Fabinho in the midfield. Fabinho, for me, has to be in the midfield when he's fit. He provides that shield in front of the back four, as well as he provides that kind of cutting edge going forward as well, playing those balls over the top. But yeah, I think other than that, I think it will just take a bit of time for the players to bed in and stuff. But anyways, guys, thank you for listening to this first episode of Let's Talk Liverpool. Make sure you subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and follow if you're listening to this on the podcast. But thank you all for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one.